Today's lesson is going to introduce students to the concept of poetry from different cultures. I'm going to be using developing tray, which presents the text as a photographic developing tray would, where certain letters rather than images are showing through and only part of the text is presented to them. So we're just going to look at the beginning of the poem to start off with. Just the first line here. Right, so we've got the like in. The students in the group today are a group that I believe have strong innate intelligence, although they don't necessarily achieve academically. In terms of data, they're very heavily D students in their predictions. Now, that means that this is a focus group for the department. If this group manages to succeed in terms of C grades, it will turn our results from good results into very good results for this year. So we've got like in. Now, what might that tell us straight away? What have we got? We've got describing something.
Like a pod.
What's a pod?
Sounds like something small.
Is it a metaphor?
Metaphor is
Yeah, it says long.
isn't it?
Okay. Now we've got a starred out word there. Now the reason this is starred out is because it's a vital word. It's a really important word for you to understand what this poem or this opening to this poem is about. Let's look at it a little bit more. The what like a pod. Have we any idea what that might be?
Skin cracking.
The skin up here cracking like a pod.
It don't fit in.
Cracks.
Cracks, Brendan says. Cracks.
When the thing opens, it cracks. Like the noise of the pea pod opening.
Why might that match skin?
They're going to close up when your hand shuts and open when it... So that when your hand opens, they're stretching. Wrinkles.
So it's on about something old.
You've picked up this comparison. You're not sure whether it's a metaphor or not. You think it might be. It's describing something as like a pod, something small. You're thinking of peas in a pod because peas squeeze open. Now you think it might be the skin cracks like a pod. Well, Tom mentioned pods crack open to reveal what's inside, and that's making you think of your lines in your skin. The key skill to get students into a C grade for the reading part of the exam is the word insight, as opposed to understanding for a D grade. And I believe that developing trade gives them this insight into the text that they are studying.
I was going to say, there never is enough. Like,
there never is enough. Good answer, yes. You often say, don't you, it's never enough, something.
You know when we're saying like something old and something small, if it's like a holy person or writing this, it could be like someone old's about to die and something's going to relive small.
That's a really interesting thing. Do you know what we call that idea? When something old's about to die and...
reincarnation.
Is that the blessing of the poem? Reincarnation. Students using developing tray develop their thinking skills and their team skills, their cooperation, and learn from each other as well. It requires analysis, it requires prediction, so it takes you right up and down the taxonomy of thinking skills. And the skin cracks like a pod. There never is enough. Tom?
So you know the star word?
Yes.
Because it's talking about, if you're on about like skin cracking and there's going to be wrinkles and old people, then they ain't got moisturised skin. So could that be something to do with water?
Could it be?
Because if the skin's cracking, it's not moist enough.
We're looking for moist skin. Are we looking for water here as part of it?
When babies are born, they have dry hands and that.
So does that go back to our reincarnation idea? Okay.
It could be an old mug.
An old mug, okay, is our old mug. Okay, so shall we check it through? We haven't looked at it yet. Remember, you started from virtually nothing. You've now got a complete text. You think this is a poem called Blessing, which says, the skin cracks like a pod, there never is enough water. Imagine the deep of it, the small splash. Ache is an old mug, the voice of a kindly God. Let's have a little look and see what we've come up with. The skin cracks like a pod. Excellent, dead right. There never is enough. And you've got the starred word, water. Well done, Tom. Imagine, it's not the deep of it, but we've got to imagine the something of it, the small splash. Not ache. We've got the mug right, though. It's the voice of a kindly God. Now, it's imagine the something of it, the small splash, something about a mug.
Imagine the damp of it because there's not enough moisture.
Imagine the damp of it, there's not enough moisture. Connie?
Small splash, echo, because splash is echo.
Ah, echo. We're using some sound now, aren't we? What about next line? Car?
In a.
In a. Are you thinking this line runs on? Echo in a something mug. In a new mug, a big mug?
No.
Big?
Because big things like echo.
Because it'll make more of an echo, OK? Echo in a big mug. Let's have a look and see how you've done with these things here. Imagine the, not damp of it, good idea, but it doesn't quite fit. The small splash. Echo, excellent. Echo in a, not big mug. You've got an eye.
Is it in a tin mug?
In a tin mug. Now, what made you say a tin mug there, Jake?
Because it might echo in a tin mug because there's the metal.
Excellent answer, yes. Echo, because tin will make it echo.
So, could that be drop?
The drop of it. Let's see if you've got it right. Or not drop. It's very, very close. Yeah, you...
That means that it's just going to drip if there's not enough.
Not enough water, just a drip, only a small amount. And there you go. Exactly right. Now, what I want us to do is to just think, where are we? What's going on? Why is there never enough water? Why are we imagining the drip of the water? Any ideas? Jake?
So it could be about a poor country like that doesn't have no water, and like when they have water, it's like God giving them life.
That drip of water might just be a blessing because it's a little bit of water, but it's better than nothing.
Is it like, because it says echo in a tin mug, like they're shouting and it's just echoing back to them, no one else can hear them?
It could show that, like, they get a drip of water and they see it as a blessing, whereas we take things for granted.
We certainly do take water for granted, don't we?
When it says imagine the drip of it, so if there was in a hot country and everything, so they'd be really like hungry and thirsty, so they'd sit there imagining it, imagine the drip of water in their mouth or something.
Absolutely. What might you imagine in the way they imagine water?
Like it's heaven.
Like it's heaven to you. I'm going to ask you to write the next few lines. Think of what's in the poem. Think of what you've picked out of the poem. What comes next?
Some person that is, like, thirsty, like, ain't got no water, so they could have, like, a dry whisper in their throat.
Yeah.
OK, so you've got a line here, but then suddenly turns. The voice is not so kindly. Now, what made you think it's going to turn?
Because when it's hot and then like it's big in a big drought, as soon as the drought goes, it rains, but it overrains and things start getting flooded.
Ah, so we're going too much water.
What was the last word? The voice of a kindly God.
The students are constructing, creating their own section to the poem to demonstrate what they have learnt and analysed from within the poem. So come on, both of you over here. One pair are typing in their constructed version of the next stanza of the poem, and the rest of the class are going through it on developing tray, seeing if they can reconstruct what their classmates have put together.
Touch.
Touch my child for the roughness of my... What about touching my child? So why did you choose to say it is so hard?
It was like a mother talking, saying that it's too hard for her even to touch her own child because of like her skin and it's too rough.
The one that was selected in the end to feed back to them through developing tray went very successfully indeed. I was particularly pleased that one of the other members of the class was able to engage in a discussion about what they might have meant, which was a little bit like having a poet there and being able to discuss with them what their intentions were.
Could it show it's like too brutal for it to touch because of how damaged their skin is because of the heat? The water's too brutal to touch their skin.
It wasn't like the water that's too hard, it was meant to be that because, say, the mother has probably give every water that she had to a child, then her skin's too rough to touch a child. She doesn't want to hurt a child.
We began by taking the poem we'd never seen before, taking the first two stanzas, and we built it out of nothing. We focused on a lot of ideas about the language, about the comparisons. You even spotted you thought it might be a metaphor. Actually, it's a simile. Similes go with like or as, but you're right in saying it's an image. And you moved it forward and you decided where you thought it was going to go next. There were lots and lots of different ideas. But we had a go. We had a go at Natalie and Jake's, who brought in the voice of a mother after the voice of a kindly God, complaining about how the lack of water is affecting her ability to even touch her own child. I think developing tray was the key to them seeing the depth of that poem. When I think that they even went as far as accessing the idea of reincarnation, which may actually be somewhere underlying some ideas of the language of the poem, shows you the detail and the depth they go to when they work together on a short text like this.
I enjoy it more than anything else because you understand it more.
Other lessons, you're just used to just sitting there, just like being staring into space, but this, it's more like better.
I prefer talking about ideas instead of writing them down.
If I read a book, things won't stay in my head, but when I do this, things just seem to stay in my head more, so I remember things from the last lesson.
Makes lessons more enjoyable than copying out of a book.
It's good because you're working as a group instead of an individual, and it takes all the pressure off you, and you can like work as a group and get the work done together.
And when you don't know what it is, you get annoyed, but then at the end you're just like, oh, God, I've done it. Because then you feel like you've accomplished something at the end of it.
Developing tray lesson like that gives you really a bit of a buzz as a teacher. When you see that level of learning going on in front of you, it's quite fantastic to watch. Wonderful to watch students who, as I said earlier, maybe expected to be D-grade students, producing much, much better work and ideas than that. It really is quite exhilarating to see.